Sometimes the heaviest burdens are not carried on our backs, but inside our hearts. Once, in a quiet valley surrounded by wheat fields and winding rivers, there lived a young man named Arman. He was 24, tall and strong, with calloused hands that spoke of years of labor. Most of the villagers knew him as the blacksmith's son, but after his father passed away, Arman had inherited the small, crumbling workshop. The shop was little more than a shed with a soot-darkened chimney, broken tools, and a roof patched with straw. From dawn till night, Arman hammered metal into shape. Hoes for the farmers, knives for the butchers, hinges for old creaking doors. But no matter how hard he worked, he earned barely enough to buy flour, milk, and firewood for his widowed mother and younger sister. Arman, however, was not content with survival. He dreamed of building something greater. "One day," he whispered to himself while staring at the glowing furnace, "this workshop will become the finest forge in the region. People will travel from faraway towns just to see my craft." But dreams are costly, and life is unkind. Whenever he tried to save money, it vanished with sudden expenses: a broken roof tile, his sister's fever, or his mother's medicines. The villagers often mocked his ambition. "Arman," one farmer chuckled, "you can barely keep your fire burning, and you talk of fame?" The words cut him like sharp steel, but he never let go of his dream. One cold autumn morning, fortune knocked on his soot-stained door. An old traveler named Yusuf, known across villages for his wisdom, visited the forge. His cloak was worn, but his eyes sparkled with experience. "I need a great iron gate," Yusuf said, placing a parchment sketch on the table. "Can you build it in 2 weeks?" Arman's heart raced. It was the largest commission he had ever received, and the payment promised could feed his family for months. He accepted without hesitation. For days, the sound of hammer-striking anvil echoed across the valley. Sparks danced like fireflies in the dim workshop. Yet soon, problems began. The iron he had stored was insufficient. When he went to the supplier, prices had risen, and he could only afford half of what he needed. He thought of asking Yusuf for more money, but shook his head. "No, I must do this alone. If I ask, he will think I am weak." He borrowed from a wealthy villager named Karim, but Karim laughed. "Why should I invest in your foolish dream? You'll never finish such a task." Shamed, Arman walked back empty-handed. That night, staring at the flickering embers, he wondered if he should abandon the project. "Maybe my dream is too big," he whispered. But then his mother's gentle voice echoed in his memory. "Arman, no river flows wide without tiny streams feeding it. Take one step at a time. Don't be afraid to begin, no matter how small." The next morning, filled with fragile hope, he loaded a few iron tools he had crafted, simple knives, sickle blades, and horseshoes, into a cart. He decided to travel to the nearest town to sell them. The journey was long and the risk heavy. If no one bought his work, he wouldn't even have enough coins to return home. At the marketplace, people hurried past without looking. His cart stood lonely in the corner. Hours dragged by, and hunger gnawed at his stomach. Just when despair began to settle, a merchant with keen eyes stopped. He picked up a sickle, tested its edge, and smiled. "Strong, durable work," he said. "I'll take all of them." Arman could hardly believe it. The coins in his hands felt heavier than gold. With that money, he bought the iron he needed and returned to his village with renewed determination. He labored endlessly, and by the 14th day the gate was ready, strong, elegant, and beautiful. Yusuf examined it and declared, "You have the hands of a true craftsman. Never doubt your gift." Word of Arman's skills spread. Soon, villagers from neighboring towns came with orders: plows, axes, tools of every kind. Then, one winter evening, a wealthy city merchant arrived with an offer that could change everything. He wanted 50 iron stoves built within 6 weeks, promising a fortune in return. It was an opportunity Arman had dreamed of, yet it felt impossible. His workshop was small, his tools old, and his body already weary. But blinded by ambition, he said yes. That night, as snowflakes drifted against the window, he stared at the glowing coals. If I work without rest, I can do it. The next day, he sold the last memento of his father, a finely crafted silver ring. His eyes burned as he handed it over to the jeweler, but with that money he bought fresh iron and new hammers. For weeks, he worked from dawn till midnight. His palms bled, his back ached, and sleep became a luxury he could no longer afford. Villagers urged him, "Armand, rest, or you'll collapse." But he only shook his head. As the deadline drew near, disaster struck. One stove cracked under the heat of the fire, and no matter how many times he reforged it, it failed. Exhausted, Armand slumped on the floor, head in his hands. His sister, Layla, found him there. She touched his shoulder softly. "Brother, you're hurting yourself. What use is success if it destroys you?" Through tears, Armand whispered, "I must prove I can do this. We can't stay poor forever." His mother, standing behind her, added gently, "My son, you've already proven your strength. But remember, even the strongest tree bends in storms. If you try to stand alone, you will break. Asking for help is not weakness, it is wisdom." The words pierced his heart. For the first time he realized that his stubborn pride was his greatest enemy. The next morning he swallowed his hesitation and asked his neighbors for help. To his surprise, they all agreed. Farmers, carpenters, and even young boys joined him. Some carried iron, others helped with shaping, and together the workshop filled with energy and laughter. By the deadline, 50 strong stoves stood ready, each polished and perfect. The merchant was astonished. He paid Armand generously and promised long-term business. With that wealth, Armand rebuilt his workshop, bought sturdy new tools, and hired apprentices from his village. The forge, once dim and broken, now glowed like the heart of the valley. But the greatest treasure was not the coins, nor the fame, nor the thriving shop. It was the lesson engraved into Armand's soul, that dreams are never achieved by pride alone. True strength lies in knowing when to stand alone and when to lean on others. Asking for help does not diminish us, it completes us.